Welcome to this webinar on FIA exams. My name is Richa and I work as Education Support Manager at ACCA. Our session today is designed to apprise you of important upcoming changes in FIA, which of course will be applicable from September 2023. And the session will also be covering a few exam techniques. You will also be having an opportunity to ask your question live to support your understanding on FIA changes. And I'm very pleased to be joined by ACCA experts Matthew Hall and Steffi Lim. Before I hand over to Matthew, I would like to cover a few housekeeping items for you. At the bottom of your screen, there are a number of buttons you can use. There is a help icon on the left, which provides resources and information to help you resolve any technical issues you might experience during the session. There are icons for slides and media player. You will need to see both of them during the webinar, so make sure you have selected them. There is attendee chat function also, which I know you are already engaged there with your fellow webinar attendees. So that's the icon on right hand side. Resource list, this icon looks like a file symbol. If you click on this, you will be able to access resource which is relevant to today's webinar. You can rearrange your screen to suit you and resize the windows if you need to. And if at any point you cannot hear what we are saying or you cannot see any visuals, please refresh your browser. Registering for this webinar means you will be sent an email tomorrow with details of how you can listen to it again. So don't worry if you miss something, you do have technical issues, you will be able to access the recording. Now I am going to hand over to Matthew in a moment. If you would like to ask ACCA or our experts a question, then please click on Q&A button, which is the middle icon at the bottom of your screens. Please note, we cannot guarantee responding to everyone directly, either verbally or via web chat, but we hope that the questions we pick or share will be helpful to everyone. So with this, handing over to Matt.
Thanks, Risha. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this webinar where I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to speak directly to students about the changes which we are introducing at the foundations level. And that also includes the subjects at the applied knowledge level of the ACCA qualification. So my name is Matt Hall. I work in the qualification team at ACCA, and I'm also delighted to be co-presenting with Steffi Lim, who has extensive experience of teaching ACCA students. So I'm going to start off just by giving a little bit of the background to the changes that we're making and tell you a little bit about why we're making them, which you may have already seen if you've looked on the ACCA website. In the various different subjects, we have some information about the changes already, so I'll talk a little bit about that later on. And then I'll pass you over to Steffi to talk about some of the practical implications of these changes and preparing for your exams, which I'm sure you'll all find particularly useful. And then we'll do a little bit of a Q&A as well. So do keep your questions coming in and we'll try to address as many of those as possible as we go through the session. So what is changing then? Well, at ACCA, we want to make sure that our qualification not only keeps up with the changing work environment that ACCA students are currently facing, but also helps to prepare them for the challenges that they, and by that they, I mean you, will face in the future. And in recent times, there's been a global shift away from businesses maintaining paper-based accounting records towards the use of computerized accounting systems, including cloud-based software. And as paper-based accounting systems become less common in the workplace, teaching ACCA students how those systems operate becomes less useful as part of the qualification and as preparation for the world of work. And so it's for this reason, really, that from September 2023, we're going to be removing all references to books of prime entry from the FA1, FA2 and FFA, which is the same as FA, syllabus documents. And all the exam questions for those exams will be written with the assumption that the entity in question is using a computerized accounting system. Now, that system could be in the form of desktop-based accounting software or a system which makes use of external servers to store data, i.e. the cloud. And it's important to emphasize that these updates don't change any fundamental accounting principles or concepts. Double entry bookkeeping is ultimately the same, whether a paper-based or a computerized system is being used. Computerized systems have been developed based on traditional double entry bookkeeping, but do have some obvious benefits relating to streamlining how transactions are recorded and reducing the risk of errors. And those computer-based accounting systems do still refer to some of those traditional terms like preparing journal entries, despite there not being a physical journal book existing. And from September 2023 onwards, candidates will still be asked to identify what journal entry would be required for a particular transaction, for example. And the difference is simply that the accounting software itself would perform the entry in real time as the transaction is recorded, and then simultaneously update the appropriate general ledger accounts and statements. So I thought I'd just run through a few examples of learning outcomes which are being removed from the syllabus. So here's a few examples that you can see on the screen now. So you can see that we're removing anything which references books of prime entry and extending the trial balance. But again, to emphasize, it doesn't mean that we aren't testing the underlying issues which those learning outcomes relate to, but rather it's the focus of them. So instead of books of prime entry, we'll be making more direct references to the accounting system itself. And for an extended trial balance, for example, it will be about the process of producing final accounts. So you're still going to be making adjustments to an initial trial balance, but we aren't going to be assuming that there's a spreadsheet where you put in extra columns, either manually perhaps, that are then added to make those adjustments. We'll be focusing more on the adjustments themselves. I'm also just going to give you a few examples now of where some of the learning outcomes are staying in the syllabus, but they're being amended in some way. And I should say at this point as well that the syllabus documents for September 2023 are already available on the website. And if you look at the final page in the appendix of those, you will see a detailed breakdown of all of the syllabus learning outcomes which are being removed, amended, or added in. So here's an example of one that we're changing from FA1. So the FA1 learning outcome B3B, as it currently is, you can see on the screen there. And you can see that there's some references to books of prime entry. So that one definitely needed to change with this particular update. And what's happened for 2023 is we've remapped it. So we moved it about on the syllabus itself. And it's become learning outcome B2B, and we've simplified it a little bit as well as removing those references to the prime entry. So now it's just prepare journal entries for various transactions, which hopefully you can see still ultimately covers the same material. Here's one for FA2 as well. So currently this is a learning outcome F2E. So prepare the reconciliation between the bank statement balance and the corrected bank ledger account. It's been remapped now to be learning outcome E1B, and we've updated it to reference internet banking records. And the fact is that, in real life, you won't always be using the monthly printed bank statement to perform bank reconciliations. You might access the online banking records at any given point. So we're trying to just include that and update it in our own syllabus document. And then here's one from FFA or FA, where we've tried to update the terminology. And again, it's ultimately still the same skill being tested, though. So learning outcome E4C has been remapped to be E1C, and we've removed the reference to the cash book. And instead, the learning outcome now just reads as identify and correct errors and/or omissions in the bank general ledger account. And you'll see it's also slightly broader to cover those instances where you might need to spot what the error might be, rather than simply being told what the error is. Just on this slide, we've got a few examples of some new learning outcomes which are being introduced from September 2023. And again, you can take a look at the syllabus and study guides to see a complete breakdown of all the new learning outcomes and any other changes which might be taking place. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a flavour of some of the changes to the FA1, FA2 and FFA exams, which is where the bulk, the majority of these updates are going to be found. But let's just have a look now, though, at the what you might refer to as the MA stream of exams, the management accounting stream, so MA1, MA2 and FMA. So like with financial accounting, it has traditionally been helpful to teach management accounting by considering very manual processes so that students understand the basics. But we feel like the time has come now to update this and make sure that students obviously still understand the basics, but are more prepared for the modern workplace after taking our exams, which is obviously the point. And in line with the changes to the financial accounting stream of exams, the use of ledgers and books of prime entry has been removed, and there's an assumption now, again, of the use of computerized accounting systems. In addition, interlocking and integrated accounting systems have been removed. The basics of double entry bookkeeping are still examinable, but again, in the context of computerized accounting systems. And journal entries are still required to record transactions, and that will still be examinable. The biggest change to the MA stream of exams is the assumption of automated systems within transaction processing. So throughout MA1, MA2 and FMA, costs are an important topic, and in particular, the recording, analysing and controlling of material, labour and expense costs. And currently in the syllabus, there's an assumption of a manual, paper-based approach. But in many organisations, these processes are automated, and so that's what we're going to be focusing on now. But again, it's important to emphasise whether it's manual or automated, the underlying controls will still be in place and must still be in place, even if there's little or no physical paper documentation. So from September 2023, the naming of individual documents will be less important than the flow of information and the control over it. Some named documents will still be examined, but it has to be recognised that where a part of a process involves the click of a button, say, then it might not be as apparent that control has been carried out, or that one document has been checked against another. The control is still essential, though, and that's what we're aiming to focus on in management accounting, rather than just the names of the documents and the physical bits of paper that might exist. For the recording, controlling and analysing of material costs, the focus is on the material control cycle. So that includes things like ensuring that only authorised purchases can be made and only authorised personnel can make purchases on the organisation's behalf, and ensuring that the suppliers used by the organisation have been approved as independent, genuine and reliable. And all these things are still important, paper-based or computerised. If we think about labour costs, labour hours need to be recorded to ensure that staff are paid the correct amount and that goods and jobs can be correctly costed rather. And most organisations now will do this using automated systems and not manual timesheets or clock cards, although we do appreciate that those systems in those businesses will still exist. And again, though, the flow of information, the authorization and the control procedures are still required, but it's just going to be explained assuming an automated process. Within cash management, there would also be the assumption that automated methods of receipt and payment of cash would be used. And some other changes for September 2023 include the removal of unit cost calculations within process costing and the preparation of process accounts. The characteristics of process costing and when it would be appropriate is still examinable, as is the understanding of normal and abnormal losses, the treatment of joint and byproducts, and the benefit of further processing. Some additions to the syllabus for September 2023 include the use of data visualization in MA2 and FMA. And some other additions to FMA include direct and indirect data capture cost, the just-in-time technique, and the importance of considering sustainability in budget preparation and performance measurement. But all of these things are important to the workplace, obviously, and we are going to just be focusing in a more modern way on these. It's also worth just taking a little bit of time to talk about audit. So at the foundation level, we have the Foundations in Audit exam, FAU, And it's also just worth considering as well audit and assurance, AA, at the applied skills level of the ACCA qualification, because FA is assumed knowledge for that exam. Now, for both FAU and AA, there is no direct impact on the syllabus or learning outcomes, and we would still expect students to be able to understand a range of different interchangeable terms for similar items and concepts. So you'll see on the slide there's a number of terms that are going to be used interchangeably for the coming year to allow students just to adjust to the updated terminology within financial accounting. And so you can see just an example of those on the slide in front of you. We still expect students to understand the entries required or the balances impacted in order to identify the audit risk or the direct control or the control deficiency, depending on the type of question. With all the changes that we're making from September 2020 and AA, we aren't trying to be overly prescriptive with the language, though. So being able to answer a question based on the information and the wording and the context in front of you is an important skill that you need to master for the exam. And it's also reflective of the modern workplace. Things are going to be called slightly different things depending on where you're working or who you're talking to. Just another final mention on some other foundation level exams. So as I mentioned earlier, the biggest impact on these changes is directly related to the FA1, FA2 and FFA exams, with some follow-on impact into other exams at the foundation level and leading into AA, that audit assurance due to the assumed knowledge required from FA. So for FFM and FTX, there have been no changes to the syllabus for these exams, resulting from the focus on computerization. For FBT, there have been some terminology changes, and the removal of a learning outcome related to the benefits and limitations of manual and automated financial systems. Now, that's not to say that there've been no other changes as part of our regular annual syllabus update, and you should make sure you familiarize yourself with the updated syllabus documents for each of those exams that you're going to take, because as I mentioned earlier, there is a detailed breakdown of the changes to the prior year, which is included in those syllabus documents. And one other thing just to flag is that we already have various different technical articles available on the ACCA website to help with these changes. So it's worth having a look at those and keeping an eye out for any future resources as well that are uploaded, because we already do have some information there and we want to try and provide you with as much detail and information as we can. So do take a look at that if you've not already been on to have a look. So hopefully that's given you a bit of a flavour if you're not aware of the background to the changes, why we're making them, why we're excited to make them. And I'm going to hand over to Steffi now, who's going to talk to you from the sort of the learning and preparing for the exam perspective. So I'll hand you over to Steffi now.
Thank you very much, Matthew. All right. Hello, everyone. Once again, welcome to our webinar today. Now, I'm the expert tutor, and my name is Steffi Lim. Let me just have a quick introduction about myself by referring to this slide. Now, I'm one of guru trainers of the Inspire Profession Academy, which is the first in the world ACCA recognized tutor training academy. And I'm also one of full-time ACCA instructors of more than 18 years with over 35,000 hours, right, in different countries. And I've got at the same time the speaker, trainer selected by the ACCA for various train the trainers program and the revision program sponsored by ACCA, and with the ultimate aim, of course, to support you in passing the exams or even to achieve excellent results. Now, so today we'll be looking at how the changes in the FI syllabus would affect your studies from September 2023 exam onwards. Now, looking at these, we understand that the updates to the following subjects as mentioned by Mr. Matthew, for instance, like we're talking about the FA1 to FFA or FA. And of course, now what about for management accounting stream? Yeah, that's with the changes as well. Like we get to see the updates for MA1, MA2, or FMA, all right, MA. So what about the last one? We're talking about the FBT. All right, so of course, today we will mainly focus more on the changes for the financial accounting stream. So let's have a look at, for instance, knowing the changes. Now we understand that the change comes in from the FA first. We're talking about FA1 right now. And let's have a look at the syllabus update and the key focus. Now, as mentioned by Mr. Matthew, that we understand that the paper-based accounting system has become less common nowadays with the shift away to the computerized accounting system. So as a result, we get to see the focus now on the new areas for the syllabus, which include the following. Where we understand we have to look into the use of the external servers to store data. We're talking about the use of the cloud accounting system, and not to forget about how transactions are being recorded. Now, ladies and gentlemen, now we're talking about the transactions being recorded, and this is mainly talking about with the removal of the reference to the use of book supplementary, which we understand at the point of recording, the point of time of recording the transactions. For instance, when the sales invoices are generated or are raised, and we understand that the appropriate ledgers or the statements will be updated simultaneously. So because of these, we have to be more focused on this part, especially looking at how transactions are being recorded. Because moving on, we also get to see that how sales invoices, some of the examples, how sales invoices, credit notes issued, recording of the entries of the cash and credit sales, receipts from the customers, and same goes to for the cash and credit purchases, payment to the suppliers. Now, perhaps you may have this question in mind that we want to understand in the first place whether journal entry will still be required. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the answer is yes, if that's manual journal entry made by the accountant. So, as mentioned by Matthew, that we understand the fundamental accounting concepts and principles remained crucial in the syllabus. So, double entry system, it's what you need to know still. Yeah. So what about the next area for the key focus for this FA1? So it's more or less the same like for FA2 as well as FA shortly. Now reconciliation, the balances on the individual supply account to the supply statement will still be required. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we'll get to see later on there's one part where we'll be talking about the removal of a particular area to do with control account for trade receivables and payables ledger account. So that one we're going to see shortly. Now, so of course, now from here, we'll be able to move on to today, 3 different poll questions here. So the first question now we'll be looking at is from the FA1, Financial Accounting 1. Now, let's have a look at this. Now, this is one of the sample questions, which is on the new learning outcome. And as everyone could see, now this is mainly to describe the key features of a computerized accounting system, including the use of the external servers to store the data. Okay, so that's a kind of accounting system. So how likely will the questions be tested or examined in the exam? Let's have a look at this right now. Now, which of the following statements about a computerized accounting system are correct? Now, where you are given 4 different options right here, so there are 4 different statements where we will have to see which of the following are correct. Now, let's have a look at statement number 1. Now, it can be used to produce the reports required by management, such as a sales analysis report. And number 2, it removed the need for the journal entries to be used. And third one, it may link directly with other systems in the business. And what about number 4? Now, it does not require the business to use a coding system as transactions are recorded automatically. Now, so ladies and gentlemen, now based on what we have briefed earlier, I believed that you're able to answer these questions, knowing that now to shift away from the paper-based accounting system to the computerized accounting system, so we understand that how important it is, especially in helping the management in producing report. So you're going to have 10 seconds for this, all right? And of course, you can select the answers, the options right there, and later we'll be able to see and to review the answer together. All right, try to think that could the answer be 1 and 2 or 2 and 3 or even 1 and 3? All right, so all you need to do is just to choose your final answer right here. So which option will be your answer here? Okay, great. Great, thanks for your participation. So we'll be able to review the answer shortly. Okay, great, thanks. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your responses here. Thank you. Great, I can see everyone. It's like, yeah, they've got the answers out here. So let's have a look. All right. Now, be able to look at the answer here that, yep, congratulations, everyone. The correct answer is 1 and 3. You are correct. Okay. Now, looking at the first, as we understand with the use of the accounting system, all right, computerized accounting system would definitely help the management of producing the reports when we're talking about the sales or the purchases. All right, so that's the correct answer and correct statement. And what about the second statement here, talking about that it removed the need for the journal entries? Now, however, as what I've mentioned earlier, the manual journal entries will somehow be required as the first part or step of recording the transactions. So as a result, the second one seems to be incorrect. And let's have a look at the third one. Is that the correct answer? Yes, the third statement is true and correct. As we understand that it may link directly with other systems in the company or in the system. So as what I've mentioned earlier, even in the future when we are able, like let's say, to look at professional exams, we get to see something like the ERPS, right, Enterprise Resource Planning System. So that tells us how all these are integrated. And what about number 4, that the coding system will not be required? This is incorrect. Somehow we understand that the coding system would help to actually convert all the financial data into usable information. So as a result, congratulations, your answer would be 1 and 3. That's the correct one. All right, good. Now, as we understand, even that's change in the syllabus, but more or less the question style, the format will still be the same, except the content with the updates. So what about FA2 now? Let's have a look at the syllabus updates and the key focus as well. Now, again, we're here to focus on the new areas as what we have seen earlier in the FA1. Our focus is mainly on the computerized accounting system, and particularly again to the use of the Excel service to store data or the cloud accounting system. And perhaps some of the students may have these questions in mind that, Steffi, is there any particular accounting system specifically to be used for exams in the ACCA? And the answer is not really. Right, so we're talking about the use of the basic computerized accounting systems and mainly to focus more on how transactions are recorded and subsequently be processed to the very last step, for example, to produce the financial statements. And of course, the initial recording of the financial data will be seen important as what I have mentioned earlier. And we were talking about how the generation of sales invoices, all right, be used, recorded, and subsequently update the appropriate statements or the accounts. And same goes to the purchases. Now, as long as or as far as we are able to receive any of the purchases invoice or the purchase invoices from our supplier, then we believe it is possible for us to update the respective ledgers and the accounts as well, as we assume that both the sales system, the purchase system will be integrated into the accounting system. All right, so that's the key focus so far, which is quite similar with what we have seen earlier. And talking about the reconciliation once again, trade payables general ledger to the supplier account. Now, we do understand, as what I mentioned earlier, that in the previous syllabus, talking about the control account for both the payables as well as the receivables has been removed, right? So what we will be seeing is more focusing on reconciliation between the supply account balances to the external documents, and we're talking about the supply statements, and that will still be required. And of course, now we're here looking at our second questions of today, and let us just have a quick look and see how these will be examined in the exam. Now, let's see. It's a sample questions for another new learning outcome, and it's mainly to demonstrate the impact of changes in the capital on the financial statements. Now, let's have a look at the sample question. Now, Riley has been trading as a retailer of shoes for many years, and during the current year, Riley required more funds to expand the business, so paid a $20,000 into his business bank account from his personal savings. Okay, so we're talking about pumping in the capital. So which two of the following will be the dual effect of the above transaction for Riley's business? Now, ladies and gentlemen, when we're talking about the dual effect, which we understand for every transaction that carries the double entry. All right, so we have 4 different options here again. So let us just have a look at what are the options here. Now, the first one, which we understand, the first effect is the increase in capital or the decrease in the capital. Number 3, the increase in assets or the decrease in assets. Now, so when we look at the term assets here, of course, we understand that these refers to both current assets and the non-current assets. But of course, we're here talking about cash. So specifically, it refers to the current asset. Now, again, you'll be given 10 seconds time now, and please give it a try, look at these questions, and to see what is the correct answer. All right, great. So I guess, sometimes when we're looking at questions like these, most importantly is that in the exam, this is always what I share to my students, as you know that ruling out some of the options will be important, sometimes when we're answering the questions. So that's part of the exam techniques. We know it's like either 1 and 2, all right, either 1 or 2, 3 or 4. So we understand if, let's say, to do with these, you know exactly the double entry first. Now, so let's have a look at the next slide. What is your answer? So we get to see that it's A, B, C, D, which are the 2. All right, great. Once again, I can see that the answers are coming in. Thank you very much. I'm going to review the answer very quickly. All right, so this is the one. Okay. Now, so let me just have a look at, yes. Oh, that's perfect. That's really great that I can see most of the students manage to answer the questions correctly. So let's have a look. From the slide, as we can see, most of you, all right, most of the students have selected the first option, increase in capital. Congratulations, this is the correct option. This is the correct statement. Okay, correct. And number 2, decrease in capital, it's completely out with 0%. None of students have selected this. Okay, great. Number 3, the increase in the assets. Yes, that is another correct answer. All right, but not really on the decrease in the assets. Okay, so let me just explain to you why the answer is the first and the third one. Now, so we understand that pumping in capital into the business, that will bring the double entry of debit cash, credit capital. All right, so we understand that as capital has increased, then that has to be credited. All right, congratulations. And of course, when we debit cash, and that refers to the increase in cash. All right, so this is mainly to support the double entry, and that is the reason why we have been focusing and we have been emphasizing by stating that the fundamental accounting principles, concepts, double entry systems will still be that crucial, important in the exam. It's for you to attempt question like this. All right, once again, congratulations that you managed to answer 2 questions. All right, okay, that's a good move. And we're now looking at the third area on the financial accounting, FA, FFA. All right, so again, let's have a look at the focus on the new areas. And of course, there'll be some new areas being added, especially for FA. Now that includes the key principles and concepts of the accounting, and mainly on the materiality and aggregation, offsetting as well. All right, so this part is definitely part of the concept of the accounting. So we're talking about the accounting principles and concepts. Yeah, that's the one that they've included. And not to forget, we say for the trade payables account reconciliation, we're talking about that earlier. Yes, that's the key focus as well for the new areas. And not to forget the same thing here, which is to do with computerized accounting systems for the use of external server, as well as the initial recording of the financial data. All right, so now we got to see in summary for FA and then FA1, FA2, our key focus is still very much on the use of the computerized accounting system. And even in my slide that I've included another sample questions as well, but that's not what we're going to look into today. So this is something to do with knowing the concept of double entry, which is important, and the students or the candidates are required to answer the questions correctly. And of course, by filling the blanks here, as we can see, it has to be all 4 correct answer in order for you to score full marks in the exam. Okay. Now, so let's move on now to the management accounting. So we have these MA1, 2, as well as the FMA or the MA. All right, so for MA1, a syllabus updates and the key focus like what Mr. Matthew has mentioned earlier of the session, talking about the change from the managed systems to the computerized systems. So we have to look into especially the key features of the computerized system. Now, so we also get to see later another questions for us covering this part, and it's mainly to do with knowing the key features of the accounting system, or I should say the computerized system, and how these would help in producing the report in the organization, and particularly in the MA shortly. All right, so we have got you these sample questions as well for MA1, for example, looking into describing the characteristics of process costing. This is still examinable in the exam or in the syllabus because we understand that the calculation of the unit cost, for example, of the equivalent unit, they are no longer in the syllabus for information, but rather we get to see the characteristics of process costing will still be examinable. So we have actually prepared you questions here, and that's considered the MRQ. All right, multiple response questions. So this type of the question will still be there in the exam. All right, so to just have a look at the quick look of the MA2. So which particular areas that we have to stay focused, for example, on the new areas in the syllabus. For example, we're looking at move away from the manual cash operations to the automated methods for the cash management. Right, so it's very much about the automated processes. And is there any particular reason or the rationale behind the change by adding all these key focus in the new area of the syllabus? And the main reason is because as the student, they get themselves, let's say, progresses to the next level of the ACCA, they will get to see process automation. All right, so it's not just in the MA, but in the future, when you get to see performance management, when you have made a choice to attempt the paper like APM, Advanced Performance Management, it's very much about automated processes. All right, so we get to see more in the future, hopefully, when it comes to the P-level paper, we're talking about professional level. exams. That the key focus is more on the cost accounting systems, as we understand is to move towards computerized systems, again looking at the key features of the computerized accounting system again. Okay, so now once again you can have a look at this slide where we have another sample questions for MA2. And we understand that they have included and added this area in the syllabus. It's very much to do with the data visualization to present the information. So you get to see questions like these, and it's 100% theoretical aspects, and students are required to answer both of them. All right, so I would say the level of challenge for this kind of questions is still all right. Level of difficulty is not too high, as long as we know exactly, for example, what's line graph, pie chart, then we'll be able to answer the questions. It's quite straightforward. Now, but what about looking at MA, the management accounting? Let's have a look at this. Now, as everyone is aware that from the study of the management accounting, which will eventually help in, especially to help you in understanding, to gain a better understanding in studying your performance management PM paper in the future. So for the syllabus updates and the key focus here, we're looking at all these key points. For example, we're looking at data capture cost. We're going to have a last question later that's to do with the data capture cost. And again, this part, it's also in the syllabus of performance management for your information. So we understand that how these, or how important is this in affecting your future studies. And of course, not to forget, data visualization, it's here as well in the MA. And talking about the general economy environment, sustainability in budgeting. So looking at the term sustainability seems to be really important, and especially in supporting the study of management accounting or the performance management in the future. Especially, let me just quote you an example. Now, we understand that when we study management accounting, there's one particular topic to do with performance management. And we understand that in looking or in learning performance management area, what is important is to set the key performance indicator as what we know as the KPI. So in the future, we can even get to see setting sustainable KPI in the exam. And that sounds really interesting. So from the MA, we'll be able to look at what is sustainability in budgeting. And of course, the next point, the impact of sustainability on performance management. Now, they have even included the area to do with the total quality management with more focus on that. And we understand that these will relate to continuous improvement as well. So these are all to support, all right, or to provide support to your future studies. And again, for now, let's have a look at the last sample question that we're going to see today. All right, so that's for management accounting, MA, FMA. Now, it's the sample questions for another new learning outcome, again from MA, FMA. It's very much to identify the direct and indirect data capture cost of the management accounting information. Now, students are required to select or to choose which two of the following are the examples of the direct data capture cost. And of course, you need to understand what is that all about. For example, how organization capture data and subsequently be processed into information. And we understand how important is this information, as whatever management data to be processed into the management information is always to support the managers in planning, in decision making, and of course in control. And that's the reason why in the syllabus that students or candidates are required to learn about budgeting, decision making, and variance analysis. So we have 4 options here, so we have to select 2 of them. Okay, let's see the first. The use of the barcodes and scanners. Number 2, completions of timesheets by employees. Payroll department processing time of employee cost, as well as the last part, the input of the data into the production system. All right, so we're going to have 4, ladies and gentlemen. You can have 10 seconds time from now, and please choose 2 out of the 4. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to have first, second, third, and fourth. Let's see. Right, let's have a look. Now, I guess everyone will be able to answer this question because once again, we understand that the previous two questions were nearly everyone answered correctly. So we're going to see these right here. Let's see. Okay, great. All right. Okay, I can see the first options like nearly about more than 62.5% of the candidates going for the first. Yeah, that's right. The use of barcodes and scanners is definitely for us to capture the data. All right, that is the correct answer for the first. And let's see number two. Now, the completion of the timesheets by employee. All right, in the first place, is this correct? Okay, let's have a look at these again. The completions of timesheets by employee, it's now you can see it's correct. All right, that's the second one. Okay, so as you can see, the third one, the payroll department processing. All right, sorry for this. All right, so it is supposed to be the payroll processing. So for payroll processing, unfortunately, this is not the answer because this is more towards data processing cost. All right, rather than the data capture cost. Okay, but for those who have got it wrong, don't give up, no worries, okay, because at least you learned from mistake. This is always what I share with my students, you see. It's a good try. Now, of course, the last one talking about the input of the data into the production systems, again, this is not the correct answer. So once again, we know that for data capture course, it's very much to do with the first, the second, but instead for the rest are more towards the data processing. Okay, so bear in mind, whatever you have seen these in your MA, all right, you will definitely be able to apply them again in performance management in the future. All right, so we get to see the data capture course again in the future. So of course, towards the last. Now, I understand that in order for us to learn every single topic in the syllabus, that's not easy. But bearing in mind, I always find it's important to summarize all the key points, no matter where I teach. Okay, so let's have a look at the steps to success and what should we do in order for us to pass the exam. Now, studying the whole syllabus is always important, but I understand that students will have these questions in mind, especially for the part-time students. So some of the part-time students, they may probably share with me and sharing with me and by telling me and say, now, Steffi, I have to work. I don't think I can actually focus on the entire syllabus. All right, I find it really difficult for that. But at least we say, if it's possible, try to focus on the key and the important topics first. So I'm not saying it's not to cover the whole syllabus. No, it's still important for that as you are going for the objective test questions. So as a result, study or covering the entire syllabus is important, but stay focused and be more emphasized on the key topics. That seems to help the student in passing the exam. Now, of course, second point, practice the exam standards questions in time. Is that important? That is really important by the use of the specimen exams and the practice tests available on the ACCA website. Now, moving on to the third one, working competently in the computer-based exam environment. This is still, again, seem to be really important because we understand that some of the students, they still prefer, or probably they're still looking at, for example, the use of the paper-based revision pack or probably the question set, but we will still advise the students to get themselves familiarized with the CBE system. That's important, and that is the mode that how they're going for the exam. So this is important. And number 4, now, of course, debrief your answers and focus on the weaker area. For example, by practicing the questions. For instance, if you find that your area of underperformance could be, let's say, on the interpretations of accounts, and all you need to do is stay focused on that and keep practicing the question. Now, most importantly, it's even some students, they got the questions answered wrongly, but that's not a big deal because we always learn from mistake. That is always one of the best way to learn. Now, of course, the last point, making use of the examining team guidance and technical article. Ladies and gentlemen, how important is this, as mentioned by Mr. Matthew earlier? Right, so for the changes in the FIA syllabus from September 2023 onwards, and of course, there are quite a number of the technical articles available on the ACCA website, and of course, particularly for FA1, FA2, as well as the FFA, looking at how computerized accounting system, right, would affect, for example, your studies, as well as the process of preparing financial statements. So I would still find that all of these documents seems to be important in helping you to pass or to even score excellent results in the exam. All right, so once again, it's my pleasure to be here today to share with you all these key areas. And of course, for any further questions for this part, I will hand over to Mr. Matthew. Matthew, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steffi, for such an interactive and informative presentation there. I'm sure everyone found that really helpful. I can see the emojis coming through, so thanks for that. And thanks everyone for engaging in those polls and questions there. Some of you might not have even started studying yet, and you're, for those of you that had a go at that, thanks for getting involved in it. So we have just under 10 minutes, about 8 minutes or so left just to answer a few questions. So if you do have any last minute questions, do type those into the Q&A and we'll see if we can pick those up. But let's just have a look and see if there's anything in there that's not been answered. I know my colleague's been behind the scenes answering some of these questions. I can see there's one here though. I'll answer a little bit of it actually, and then I'll pass over to you, Steffi, for your input on this. So will accounting software like QuickBooks involve in study and learning outcomes? So I suppose that means will accounting software like QuickBooks and other accounting software packages are available, are they going to be sort of referenced or named in the learning outcomes and in the study material? So from the learning outcomes point of view, we aren't specifically naming any particular accounting packages, and you're not expected to have any sort of underlying knowledge about how any specific package works. In the same way as before, you weren't expected to know exactly how the paper-based accounting system operated for that particular entity. What we're really doing is updating to assume a general computerized accounting software, but you're still going to need to know in the exams what some of these traditional things look like. So for example, in the exam questions themselves, you'll still need to know what T accounts look like. So for those of you that started your studying, you'll know it's a sort of T shape, and you've got your debits and your credits on one side and the other, and that's how it's still going to be visualized in the exam itself. So we're not going to have any sort of particular logging into a specific exam, specific computerized accounting system. So you still need to be aware of what it would kind of look like visually, and the best way to do that is to look at the specimen exams, and the updated specimen exams, I should say, will be available around mid-August for leading into these September changes. Steffi, I don't know if you want to just come in on the sort of studying point of that.
Yeah, so for the accounting system wise, as what we have mentioned earlier, so no particular reference to QuickBook or even SQL or any other practical accounting systems in the market, but it's more towards on, as I mentioned just now, it's more towards on recording the transactions and also the entire process of preparing the financial statements. Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
And another question here. So how much will it update FFA topics like company accounts, consolidation, cash flow? I suppose the quick answer from my point of view there is it's not going to update it. So although there may be updates more generally to the syllabus, and I would encourage you to look at the syllabus documents and you can see the changes from the prior year, but these updates to computerized systems, the assumption of a computerized system, hasn't changed any of the fundamentals. We've not changed the structure of the exam. We're not changing the fact that you need to be able to prepare the statement of profit or loss, the statement of financial position, group accounting, all that stuff is exactly the same, or say it's exactly the same. I mean, have a look at the syllabus and study guide to see the changes overall. But what I mean is that the computerization hasn't changed those fundamentals. Steffi, I don't know if you want to throw anything on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually no updates, but instead, there would be some of the changes in the terminology. For example, from final accounts to the financial statements. It's mainly for that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you're right. So a lot of it's terminology changes, but yeah, the fundamental principles and concepts aren't changing.
There's no change. That's right.
Let's have a look and see if there's anything else in here, and do keep them coming through. We will try and use up our time, so we've got about 4 minutes left.
Yeah, I actually have one question that I'm going to pick up from the Q&A that I think one of the students sent in questions about any changes in the exam structure. So it's actually quite a number of them asking this question. So I believe there's no changes in the exam structure so far. Right. So yeah, that's the questions right.
Yep. So no changes in the structure of the exam itself. It's really just quite a big syllabus change. But I know, or you may be aware that for other exams, we've changed the way that it's examined, like the ATX exams, for example, or we're introducing pre-seen into the SBL exam. Those are quite big fundamental changes to the structure of the exam. That hasn't happened with these exams. So what we're talking about here is really syllabus changes and focus on computerization. What else have we got in here? So what are the key focus areas in MA2 and FMA? So we're sitting in August for the CBE attempt. Now, this is probably worth picking up because you need to be aware of the timing of the changes here. So if you're talking about the August exam, if you're sitting any of these on-demands in August, you're still going to be on the 22-23 syllabus. And in fact, even for the first part of September, you're still going to be on the 22-23 syllabus. So the exact dates and timings of when this changes over, when the syllabus changes over, is again on the ACCA website. So if you have a look at the syllabus and study guides on the ACCA website, then you'll see exactly when those changes are taking place. But Steph, I don't know if you want to just throw in there on the key focus areas for MA2 and FMA. I suppose maybe comparing and contrasting with the upcoming changes.
Yeah, I think it's more to focus on the data capture course, data visualization. So that part, I think it's what the students will have to be more focused on because it wasn't in the earlier syllabus. And of course, as I mentioned, with more increased emphasis on these would definitely help not just in your MA, all right, or FMA, but even in the skill level as well. Yep.
Yeah. Thanks, Steffi.
Yep. More to it. Yeah, thank you.
So another one here, just this is an interesting one. So they want to sort of say that the financial accounting FA FFA paper, it seems that there's only been small changes to the system and nothing significant. And they're just pointing out as well that idea that the syllabus for 22-23 is still in effect up until the September the 18th. So it's interesting because there is sort of changes obviously to the FA and FFA exams for this computerization, but you'll see it gets sort of less significant, I suppose, or less obvious as you go up through the qualification. So the biggest changes are really happening at the FA1 level, because at that level we're really focused on how do you enter the data? You are making a sale, where do you record it? You're making a purchase, how do you get that into the system? And then as you get further and further up, it moves a little bit further away from that, although it's still slightly involved in that in FA2 and FFA. And, in theory, this could alter the exams right up until SBR. But when you get up to those higher levels, we're not focusing so much on the data entry into the accounting system. We're focusing on the higher level accounting issues. So you will see that change in sort of peaking at the start and then looking like it tails off. It's just the way that the exams are kind of focused, I suppose. Now, I'm very conscious now that we have hit our time limit, so I'm afraid we do need to stop there, but hopefully that has given you a bit of a flavour and an answer for some of those questions. And I know we did get through a lot of the questions in the chat as well. So I'll just say a big thank you to everyone for attending. A big thank you to Steffi for doing her interactive and very informative session as well. And thank you, Fabricia, for hosting us at the start there.
Thank you very much, everyone. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to speak with you today. Thank you. Thanks, Matthew. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.